rewinds back, if you will, to December 2020. Look, I know none of us actually want to go back to 2020, I'm just saying think about it, don't manifest it. I announced that I was going on a book buying ban. No books for Liane for 6 months. And then because I'm a sensible reader, I went ahead and placed a bunch of pre-orders. Let's talk about those books right now, because then it'll feel closer to them actually coming through my mailbox. I mean, I know I'm not doing too badly for new books, but I need more. It's Liane and welcome to what essentially amounts to my most anticipated books for the second half of 2021. That's right, it's okay, we're still in 2021, we don't have to go backward. Come back, you're safe, we're just talking about books. First off, let's start with a book that I mentioned really recently in a haul because it is burning a hole in my TBR cart and I want to read it right now. This is Blackwater Sister by Zen Cho, and I need you to know that it begins with a ghost being really rude. This is about Jasmine and she finds herself at the end of her university degree absolutely unemployable. She is broke, she is homeless, and she has absolutely no choice but to return to Malaysia. The thing is, Jasmine actually grew up in America. She knows nothing about Malaysia, its customs or her heritage, and she really doesn't know how she's going to survive. And then at the very moment that she decides it's the only choice that she has left to her, a voice appears in her head. The ghost of her dead grandmother who made a bargain with a Malaysian deity that she was going to get even for it. And she's decided that Jasmine is the perfect vehicle for revenge. The tagline says, drawn into a world of ghosts, gods and her family's shenanigans, Jess soon realises that getting a job will be the least of her worries. I mean, seriously, give me one good reason why I shouldn't just pick this up and read it right now. Next up, also coming out on the 10th of June, apparently a very good date for publishing, we have Heaven by Meiko Cowakami. You might recognise the author's name from their last novel, Breasts and Eggs, but this one is significantly shorter, and I'm wondering how they're going to pack the same amount of punch into this many pages. This one is told from the point of view of a 14-year-old student who is being relentlessly bullied because he has a very obvious physical difference. But instead of fighting back against the bullies, he has just decided that this will make his life worse, and so he has given in completely. Then one day he finds a little safe haven with a female classmate. They start meeting up in secret, finding that their time together helps them to get through these long school days full of horrible words. But then, as the back of the novel says, they are meeting up completely unaware that their relationship has not gone unnoticed by their bullies. I'm sure you guys know by now, but every new book that comes into my house, I read the first couple of pages of it when it hits my desk. Sometimes I get stuck, but the first couple of lines of this one has one of the most harrowing sentences that I've read in a while, and I don't think I'm prepared, but I'm going to read it anyway. Next up, also coming out in June, is Fragile by Hilary. Now, don't do what I did and judge the book by its cover. This is apparently a psychological thriller that is very gothic, and it has been compared to Rebecca, which is a very lofty claim, if I may say so. I do have a slight question mark about this one, because despite the fact that the synopsis sounds amazing, this is Hilary's first standalone thriller. She usually writes in the crime genre, which is something that I've very much stepped back from in the last year. Crime is just not something that I enjoy reading anymore, especially really traditional crime, which is what Hilary usually writes. So I'm gonna give it a try, but I am cautiously optimistic about this one. I also don't think that I can do the synopsis any better justice, so I'm going to read it to you. It says, one crack and their lives will shatter. Nell Ballard is a runaway, a former foster child with a dark secret she is desperate to keep. All Nell wants is to find a place she can belong. So when a job comes up at Starling Villas, home to the enigmatic Robin Wilder, she seizes the opportunity with both hands. Only her new lodgings may not be the safe haven she was hoping for. Her employer lives by a set of rigid rules, and she soon sees that he is hiding secrets of his own. But is Nell's arrival at the villas really the coincidence it seems? After all, she knows more than most how fragile people can be, and how easy they can be to break. I have every hope and everything crossed. Now let's move on to my hefty pile of pre-orders. First up, coming out really soon, like really soon, on the 29th of April, we have got Dial A for Aunties. I literally pre-ordered this book on the strength of the cover alone and the following line: "Your family would kill to see you happy." This one is about Medi Chan. She has been set up on yet another awkward blind date by her aunties. But this one goes a little bit worse than all of the rest of them have, because she accidentally kills him. Afterwards, she decides not to call the police, but to call her aunties, because her family's wedding business is literally in the middle of the biggest wedding of the year and they cannot afford the scandal. Unfortunately, this makes hiding the body just a little bit more difficult, especially because the venue where they are trying to hide him is being managed by Medi's ex, aka the guy who got away. It also helps that almost all of the reviews so far have said that it is whip smart funny, which just, yes, I'm in, sign me up. Next up, coming out on the 13th of May, I have a creepy horror for you. This is The House of 100 Whispers by Graham Masterton, and it takes place in a creepy, horrible old crumbling Tudor estate on Dartmoor. As in bleak, blustery, misty Dartmoor. As in you'll never find a body if it's buried in Dartmoor. All Hallows Hall has fallen into a state of disrepair. It used to belong to the warden of Dartmoor prison, but now that he has died, he has passed it along to his estranged children. The family move in hoping to make renovations and save the hall, but the atmosphere of Dartmoor and all of the weird creaks and groans completely freak them out. They only last a little while and then they decide that they are going to leave. They are packing up everything and they are going to flee, except that the day that they decide to leave, their little boy goes mysteriously missing. As you can probably tell, I'm pretty excited for this one. The only thing that's holding me back, just a tiny little bit, is that it has been blurbed by every male horror author in the world. As in like Stephen King, James Herbert, Peter James, all of those kinds of male horror authors. So it is with some trepidation that I say I will be reading this one as soon as it comes into my house. Knowing my luck, I'll end up entertaining all of you guys with a salty review. Next up, another one coming out in June is the Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. Wow, that took me like 4 takes to say Jasmine and June in the same sentence. This is an adult fantasy, and quite honestly, I think adult fantasy is serving when it comes to covers in 2021. This one is about 2 characters, one a vengeful princess looking to depose her brother, and the other a high priestess searching for her family. The tagline says, "Together they will change the fate of an empire," and honestly, perhaps the fate of my reading for the rest of the year, because all I want to read right now is fantasy, and it's because of books like this. The synopsis for this one says, imprisoned by her dictator brother, Malini spends her days in isolation in the Harana, an ancient temple that was once the source of powerful magic, but is now little more than a decaying ruin. Priya is a maidservant, one of the several who make the treacherous journey to the top of the Harana every night to attend Malini's chambers. She is happy to be an anonymous drudge as long as it keeps anyone from guessing the dangerous secret she hides. But when Malini accidentally bears witness to Priya's true nature, their destinies become irrevocably tangled. I also would like to become irrevocably tangled with this novel, thank you very much. Next up is an absolutely adorable premise that kind of really speaks to my heart. This is The Key to You and Me, and it is a contemporary romance with driving lessons. For those of you who don't know, that may or may not be how I met lovely wife Helen. They were my driving instructor and now they are my wife. I mean, lucky me, right? But that is a meet cute synopsis that has needed to be written for a really long time. This one is about Piper Kitts. She has gone to spend the summer with her grandmother after a really horrific breakup that has left her reeling. She has absolutely no intentions of doing anything for the summer except for training with the horses that she loves, and then her grandmother decides that it's time for her to face her fears. And she gets her some driving lessons. The person that she gets her driving lessons from is Kat Pearson. She has lived forever in this small town and she has always suspected that she liked girls, but she is worried because it's a tiny town in North Carolina and realistically there's not a lot of room for, you know, sexuality and gender expression. But then they're locked in really close quarters in a car together and well, things happen when that happens. You know? I really hope that this is every bit as adorable as it suggests it will be. Next up, coming out at the end of this month, at the end of April, and just not soon enough, is the Mary Shelley Club. This is a YA horror that just... the book gods have blessed me. Let me just read you the synopsis and then you'll get it, okay? When it comes to horror movies, the rules are clear. Avoid abandoned buildings, warehouses and cabins at all times. Stay together, don't split up, not even just to check something out. If there's a murderer on the loose, do not make out with anyone. If only surviving in real life were this easy. New girl Rachel Chavez turns to horror movies for comfort, preferring stabby serial killers and homicidal dolls to the bored rich kids of Manhattan Prep. I mean, who wouldn't? And to certain memories she'd preferred to keep buried. Then Rachel is recruited by the Mary Shelley Club, a mysterious society of students who orchestrate fear tests, elaborate pranks inspired by urban legends and movie tropes. This book is for me. At first, Rachel embraces the power that comes with the reckless pranking, but as the fear tests escalate, the competition turns deadly, and it's clear Rachel is playing a game she can't afford to lose. I mean, do I need to say anything else? Are we on the same page here? I just want to read it now. Why is it not in my house now? Speaking of horrific YA things that potentially have a lot of bodies, let's talk about the new Catherynne M. McManus book, shall we? This is You'll Be the Death of Me, and it is about Ivy, Cal and Mateo, who used to be really good friends in middle school, but they've since kind of drifted apart. One day, Cal pulls into high school a little bit late and the three all bump into each other and they all come up with a harebrained scheme. Why don't they just ditch school the way that they used to? They'll go hang out downtown, they'll have fun, there'll be no adults, it'll be great. But while they're in town, they spot one of their already quite shifty classmates looking excessively shifty and they decide to follow him into an old abandoned warehouse where they stumble upon a murder scene. And just like that, I'll refer you back to the rules in the Mary Shelley Club. We do not go into abandoned places because we expect to find bodies there, my friends. Lots and lots of bodies. Next up, my beloved Leanne Moriarty is bringing out a new book. Comes out on the 14th of September, just not soon enough if you ask me to wipe out the taste of this thing. Seriously, I don't even feel like 9 Perfect Strangers was written by the same author as all of the other books that I loved so much. So I'm hoping that this one is a bit of return to form, because Apples Never Fall goes back to the small family environment that I love the most from Leanne Moriarty. This is about Joy and Stan. They are former tennis coaches who are still fit as fiddles and still winning tournaments. But after all of these years, they decided that it is about time to just sell their business and learn to retire and relax together. Also, it really is together because they don't really see their 4 adult children who are all very wrapped up in their own very middling lives. Like, Joy and Stan have a lot of opinions on how middling their lives are. But then one day, Joy Delaney goes missing and the children are left to come together, whether they like it or not, and have to re-examine their parents' marriage with, as the back says, frightened eyes. The tagline goes on to say, is her disappearance related to their mysterious house guest from last year? Or were things never as rosy as they seemed in the Delaney household? Please let them not be as rosy as they seemed. I am living for that. On the theme of apples, we have this slice of weirdness. See what I did there? Apple slice. This is Come For Me With Apples by Catherynne M. Valente, and it comes out in October, which I think is a good time for this because it sounds creepy enough that around about Halloween would be the ideal reading time. I'm just gonna read you the synopsis of this one because have you seen this cover? I don't know how I feel. Let's begin. Sophia was made for him. Not a great start, really. It's not a great start. Her perfect husband. She can feel it in her bones. He is perfect. Their home together in Arcadia Gardens is perfect. Everything is perfect. Are you getting the feeling that nothing is perfect? Because I am. It's just that he's away so much, so often. He works so hard. She misses him and he misses her. He says he does, so it must be true. He is the perfect husband and everything is perfect. But sometimes Sophia wonders about things. Strange things. Dark things. The look in her husband's face when he comes back from a long business trip. The questions he will not answer. The locked basement she is never allowed to enter. And whenever she asks the neighbours, they can't quite meet her gaze. Everything is perfect, isn't it? This sounds like Stepford Wives, but with a high voltage battery shoved inside it and Catherynne and Valente's weird sort of fairy tale like language. Quite honestly, I'm scared, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Feel the fear and read the Catherynne and Valente book with the horrific cover. She's looking at me, isn't she? Next up, coming out in July, is The Taking of Jake Livingston. This one is making my Lockwood & Co. loving bones just sing with glee. It's about 16-year-old Jake, who is a medium. He is forced to watch dead people around him every day play out their last moments over and over again, and for the most part he's quite happy to help them move on when he can. It is getting kind of complicated. All of this on top of the fact that Jake is being bullied by one of his very, very racist teachers at a very small prep school where he is one of the only black students. So one day when the handsome Alistair, another black student, joins the ranks of his classmates, he thinks that maybe a little bit of hope is on the horizon and maybe also a little bit of romance. Until of course he bumps into the ghost of Sawyer. Sawyer Doone was a troubled teen who committed a school shooting, and he has latched on to Jake and is haunting him, something that has never happened before. And Sawyer wants a lot more from Jake than he is willing to provide. Turns out surviving high school can be a little bit complicated in YA novels. Seriously, my hopes for the ghostliness of this are just like through the roof. Everybody is talking about this. There is such a big buzz for this book coming out and I am excited. One of the only times that I'm firmly on the hype train, I have bought my ticket. Choo choo. Next up, by my absolutely beloved Lyndsay Faye, the author of Jane Steele, we have a brand new book coming out in August, and it is a take on Hamlet. Honestly, this girl's power of retelling is just I want to just absorb it into my brain. This is the King of Infinite Space, and I'm just going to read you the synopsis because I think if I try and explain it to you I might hyperventilate. I'm that excited about it. Meet Ben Dane. Brilliant, devastating, devoted, honest to a fault, truly a fault. His Broadway theatre barren father is dead, but by purpose or accident. Unable to face alone his mother's ghastly remarriage to his uncle, Ben turns to his dearest friend, Horatio Patel, whom he hasn't seen since their relationship changed forever from platonic to something other. Loyal to a fault, truly a fault, Horatio is on the first flight to NYC when he finds himself next to a sly tailor who portends inevitable disaster and who seems ominously like an architect of mayhem himself. Meanwhile, Ben's ex-fiancée, Leah, sundered from her loved ones thanks to her addiction recovery and torn from her art, has been drawn into the fold of three florists from New Orleans, seemingly ageless sisters who teach her the language of flowers and whose magical bouquets both curse and cure for a price. One explosive night, these kinetic forces will collide, and the only possible outcome is death. Does that not sound like the most bonkers and brilliant thing you have ever read? The tagline says that it is lush, magical, queer, and neuroatypical, which I just want it in my eyeballs now. Then finally, for the books that I'm actually going to give you, you know, like big synopsis for, we have Kalynn Bayron's next book. I'm sure you will recognise the author's name from Cinderella is Dead. I read this at the start of the year and it was amazing. It's a Cinderella retelling with a really diverse cast and it's just, and look at the cover for this one. This is the poison heart, and oh, got one of my favourite tropes in it in the entire world, which is when people can manipulate plants. I really love in any kind of fantasy when people use herbalism as like a magical talent. This one has a really complicated synopsis and I don't want to risk screwing it up, so I'm going to read this to you as well, but just need to centre myself. Bryces has a gift. She can grow plants from tiny seeds to rich blooms with a single touch. When Bryce's aunt dies and wills her a dilapidated estate in rural New York, Bry and her parents decide to leave Brooklyn behind for the summer. Hopefully there, surrounded by plants and flowers, Bry will finally learn to control her gift. But her new home is sinister. Sinister in ways they could never have imagined. It comes with a specific set of instructions, an old school apothecary and a walled garden filled with the deadliest botanicals in the world that can only be entered by those who share Bry's unique family lineage. When strangers begin to arrive on their doorstep asking for tinctures and elixirs, Bry learns she has a surprising talent for creating them. One of the visitors is Marie, a mysterious young woman who Bree befriends, only to find that Marie is keeping dark secrets about the history of the estate and its surrounding community. I think we like Marie anyway. There is more to Bry's sudden inheritance than she could have imagined, and she is determined to uncover it until a nefarious group comes after her in search of a rare and dangerous immortality elixir. Up against a centuries-old curse and the deadliest plant on earth, Bry must harness her gift to protect herself and her family. Give it to me! My body is ready! Honestly, Kalynn Bayron's heroines are just so spunky and so quick and so easy to fall in love with, and I want to fall in love with more of them, please. So those are all of the books that I'm going to give you a synopsis for that I'm like particularly excited for. But I will also throw in just a couple of other titles as things to note. The Illustrated Assassin's Quest, the third book in the Farseer trilogy, comes out in June. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the illustrated version by my beloved Chris Riddle, comes out at the end of April, so not long to wait. Heartstopper Volume 4 comes out in May. Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid also comes out in May. And finally, Becky Chambers' new book, A Sam for the Wild Belt, comes out in June. Who else is going to party hard when that one lands on their doorstep? Show of hands. Obviously, I'll throw in a disclaimer here to say any of these dates are subject to change because we know what the publishing industry is like, particularly in the middle of the pepperoni. But I have high hopes that all of these will land on my doorstep roughly when they say they will. So that's it. That, my loves, is everything that I was able to sneakily pre-order before my book buying ban started. We've got 2 whole months before I'm allowed to pick up anything else, so you know, if there's books that I've missed from my last books that you think that I would really love, please tell me about them down in the comments below. I would love to find more books to pre-order when the ban is finished. I love a pre-order. They just pop through your door and you forget about them and then you're like, that book! If you are also excited for any of the books in this list, please also tell me that below. And clearly I want you to tell me what is your most anticipated book for this year. I need to know that. And I will speak to you all later, guys. Bye! Honestly though, I'm so stressed for this Leanne Moriarty book. Like, what if she's broken her perfect streak of books that I love? Say it so!